Hi everybody, welcome to Dynamo Sword Channel. I'm David, and today on Dynamo Sword Channel I will be reviewing the new Balaur Arms 13th to 14th century longsword. This review will be somewhat unique, as I will not only be focusing on this new Balaur Arms model, but also giving comparisons to the original model I reviewed earlier throughout this review. So, how does this new model compare to other war swords and longswords on the market, as well as this original model? Well, stay tuned and we'll find out. This Balaur Arms 13th to 14th century longsword is what would be described as an oakshot type A in the oakshot typology. A type 12A is the subtype of the 12 blade type. What defines the type 12 is a broad, moderately tapering blade with a fuller reaching between a half to a 3/4 of the blade's length, ending in an acute tip. These swords were an evolution of the earlier type 10 and 11 blade types, reducing the fuller and giving the blade body more taper, ending in an acute tip to promote thrusting while having enough body to retain its cutting capabilities. This makes the Type 12 unique as being the first designed cut and thrust focused blade type of the medieval period, and influenced the more prominent cut and thrust blade types of later centuries. What differentiates the Type 12A subtype is a longer blade and grip than the standard Type 12. This sword classifies as a longsword, or more specifically, a war sword. A war sword can be defined as a battlefield sword with a longer blade and grip, designed to be used with two hands, allowing more leverage and reach to be given to the wielder. The Type 12A blade profile was broad at the base and tapered down the body, allowing deadly shearing cuts to be made while offering the acute profile taper and tip needed for thrusting. Overall, the Type 12 and its war sword subtype, the 12A, are considered the quintessential knightly swords by many scholars, historians, and sword enthusiasts, due to being both immensely popular throughout the continent of Europe for nearly 3 centuries, as well as being the precursor to the evolution of the medieval sword to its prominent cut and thrust blade profile, as well as the 12A being the first showing of the two-handed sword style regarding war swords and long swords. Next, let's look at the overall statistics of the sword. As mentioned earlier, I will be adding the stats of the original model I have here in red, opposite the new stats in blue, as well as note any specific changes between the new models as we go through the stats. So, the overall length of this sword is 45.5 inches. It has a weight of 2 3/4 pounds and a point of balance right at 4 3/4 inches from the hilt. The center of percussion is 22.5 inches up the blade, and again, the class of blade is what would be known as a war sword. The blade's total length is 36 1/8 of an inch. The blade width at the base is 2 inches, and that tapers down to about 3/4 of an inch at the tip. The material is a 1075 high carbon steel, and the finish is a nice satin polish. The cross section is a flattened diamond with a fuller reaching 3/4 of the blade's length. The blade type again is what would be known as an oakshot type 12A in the oakshot typology. The guard's total length is 7.5 inches. The quillion dimensions are a 1/4 inch by a 1/2 inch, and that swells to 5/8 of an inch at the bow tie, and then on the base that actually tapers down to 1/8 of an inch. The material is a mild steel and has a nice satin finish. The guard style is what would be known as a style 6 guard in the oakshott typology. Now the handle length is 7 inches. It has a base circumference of 3.5 inches, and that tapers to 2 3/4 of an inch at the pommel. The handle material is wood core, and the grip material and finish is a dark brown leather with a 4-riser configuration. The pommel total length is 2 inches. The pommel width is 2 1/8 of an inch. The pommel thickness is 1/2 an inch. And the general circumference of the pommel is 6 inches. The material, like the guard, is a mild steel and also has a satin finish. The construction is peened, and the type of pommel is what would be known as an oakshott type I pommel. The scabbard is wood core with a leather overwrap in dark brown to match the grip. It features a rain guard at the mouth and a steel chape, as well as a 4-riser configuration to help support a frog or belt suspension system. Overall, it is a very well made scabbard and fits the sword well with no rattle and offers a great friction fit. Though the fit is sort of thanks to me, as the initial fit out of the box was a bit too tight and I had to file the mouth to get it to fit a little more properly. In comparison to the original model scabbard, the fit is a massive improvement, as well as the general shape and finish. As you can see with the original scabbard, it was very loose, very rattly, and had no friction fit at all. I'm very impressed with this new scabbard, especially for the price point and how it adds to the overall package. So what do I think of this new model compared to the original? Well, as you can see, there are quite a few improvements in the fit and finish of the new model, as well as a few changes in the stats such as blade length, folder width, grip length, cross guard dimensions, as well as the actual pommel type. They are in general the same sword, but overall you could see that more attention to detail was given to the new model, especially when you look at the scabbard and its fit and finish, as well as the general details of the overall swords themselves. These new models are made by Windlass Steelcrafts, and you can definitely see their expertise in budget production European medieval swords took these Balaur designs to another level compared to the original manufacturer. Does this make the older models bad? Not really, no. They are still nice swords for their price point, even with the discrepancies of steel grade and heat treatment, as you can see discussed in my previous reviews of this original model. I know some were worried that these new models, like the originals, would be too flexible or blade whippy, but as you can see, this is clearly not an issue, and these blades flex as one should without being overly flexible. Compared to the original, the new model is definitely slightly stouter, but I never really felt that this sword was really that flexible either, compared to the standards of an earlier period war sword. The blade's finish on the new sword is a nice satin, and the fuller is nice and broad. It has a good termination and finish. In comparison to the original model's fuller, it is a little bit shorter, and it looks like it's just cut a little bit deeper, and it is a slight, maybe a ½ inch or so longer. Also, the maker's mark on the new models is smaller on the blade face, which I personally prefer. The cross section has a less pronounced diamond cross section than the original, and the tips are just about near equal in termination. The cross guard on this new model is nicely cast and features a satin finish like the blade. Compared to the original, this model's guard is slightly smaller in dimension and looks to have a better finish with more symmetrical quillions, but is slightly sharper at the edges, which may be a turnoff to some. They're not sharp enough to cut, but they could be uncomfortable when gripped for some. Both are very nice examples of the Style 6 guard type. The grips are pretty equal in finish, featuring the same 4 riser configuration and textured finish. A few differences are the leather quality is better on the new model, and of course the color difference. If you watched the follow-up review on my original, you know that that sword doesn't have its stock wrap. Unfortunately, the original grip leather was poorly finished and peeled off at the seam after more consecutive use. I ended up replacing the original leather with a linen undercord and a new black leather overwrap with a 3 riser configuration before that follow-up was posted. As far as the new grip, I haven't peeled it off yet, but I would assume that due to Windlass not doing undercord normally on any of their sword models, that there is none on this handle either. The seam is finished via a skeeve, much like the original. Now, a skeeved edge is a little different than a butted edge. Now, normally when I do sword handles, I do a butted edge, which is where you take the both ends of the seam and butt them together so it's nice and smooth. A skeeve is where you kind of shave the leather down on the base first seam and then just kind of overwrap the ending seam or ending edge of the seam on top. It can look a little bumpy and risen, which was the main problem of that original one. But overall, they are functional as long as they're glued right and the skeeve is done properly enough to where that seam blends. This could, as I mentioned, kind of be a detractor, as this was the main issue of the original. But still, I really feel that this one is actually better done and holds better. It doesn't want to kind of move or shift or kind of peel off when you're twisting or going up against the seam. So just something for everyone to be aware of though. The pommel is much larger on this new model and has a better polish and finish to its shape. Of course, there really isn't much to compare between the two because they are technically 2 different styles of wheel pommel. The original having a smaller type H, and the new model featuring a larger type I. Overall though, the pommel on this new model is much more symmetrical and the peen looks to be better finished, though does still have that usual lack of blending that's kind of known for Windlass budget medieval swords. Overall, I like the new pommel and am glad they changed it to a larger pommel, as the original just looked a little too small for the sword. As far as handling, The extra quarter-pound of weight on this new bottle can be felt when transitioning guards and stances, but the drawn back point of balance alleviates this, and you feel a good counterbalance from the larger pommel of this new model as well. In comparison, I feel both are, pretty equal in handling, but do give the slight edge to the new model due to its drawn back point of balance and, of course, pommel style. I'll have more details on the handling and performance of this new model in its follow-up review after I've had more time to handle and use it, as well as sharpen it for the cutting session. In conclusion, I find this to be an excellent sword and a fine replica of a Type 12A war sword. The improvements made to this model's design by Windlass add to its overall value, and I highly recommend this and other new Balaur Arms model swords for anyone looking for a simple but historically accurate budget production medieval sword. In my initial review of the original model, I mentioned how I was excited to see more budget manufacturers and models of European medieval swords be introduced to the market. Things might have changed a little bit for Balaur Arms in that 2 years, but I think it was for the best, as we can see with these new models made by Windlass. I am still looking forward to seeing potential new models in the Balaur's lineup designed by KultofAthena, and hope to see more swords offered in the future by this brand. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review of the Balaur Arms 13th to 14th century longsword. Be sure to like and subscribe, as well as look forward to the cutting review with follow-up discussion. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.